Who sleeps in a mechanic workshop at night, wakes up before the first cock crows, and roams the city like a ghost by day? Not for food, not for pity, but for something far deeper. In the heart of Benin City, under the noise, the heat, the struggle, lives a little girl. Amara, just 3 years old, rejected by blood, feared by neighbors, and called a cursed child. Left alone in a wicked world where being an orphan is a crime, Amara doesn't cry, doesn't beg, doesn't even talk to anyone. But what she was doing in the street will shock you, because behind her silence was a purpose growing like fire. If you haven't subscribed, bestie, please do that now. And most importantly, please watch this story to the very end. It will break you, heal you, and inspire you. The full story begins now. It was a cold, quiet evening in Benin City. The sky was getting darker, the streets were empty, and all you could hear was the soft whistle of the wind. A man named Charles, young, powerful, and extremely rich, was driving his shiny black SUV back from a big business deal. His wristwatch alone could pay rent for half the city. But guess what? Even with all that money, fate had other plans. As he was speeding down the lonely road, the car suddenly made a sound. Grrr! Pack! Pack! Charles frowned and muttered, "Great. What now? Did my millions offend this car?" He turned off the AC, tapped the dashboard like it was a stubborn child, and tried restarting the car. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Annoyed, he stepped out of the car in his spotless white shirt and shiny shoes that probably had never touched dust before. He opened the bonnet and stared at the engine like it just insulted his ancestors. "Fantastic," he said sarcastically. "I make deals worth billions, but can't fix a car to save my life." He checked his phone. No signal. Called his driver. Unavailable. Mechanic. Not connecting. Not even Google Maps was loading. It was just him, his dead car, and mosquitoes with big dreams. He sighed deeply. So this is how rich men suffer in silence. He stood by the car for nearly 20 minutes, sweat soaking through his shirt, muttering to himself, "Just one peaceful day. That's all I asked." But then something strange happened. From across the road, someone was walking slowly, very slowly. It was a little girl. She looked no more than 8 years old. Her dress was faded, her feet were bare, and she carried a tiny plastic bag like it held all her life's treasures. Her hair was messy, her face looked dry, and yet her eyes sparkled with something. Hope, maybe. Charles squinted. Now, who in heaven's name lets a child walk here alone at this hour? The little girl came closer, stopped a few steps from him, and tilted her head like a curious puppy. "Sir, your car is sick?" she asked softly. Charles blinked. Was this real? "What?" he asked. She repeated herself, slowly this time. "I said, is your car sick, sir?" He stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "My car isn't sick. It's dead. Totally dead," he said dryly. The girl nodded like a doctor hearing bad news. "It's okay. Sometimes my stomach also dies when I don't eat." Charles stared at her, shocked. "Wait, how old are you?" "8, she replied proudly. "And a half." Charles raised an eyebrow. "And what do you know about cars, Miss 8.5?" She smiled, showing a missing front tooth. "I don't know cars, but I know people, and you look like someone who doesn't like asking for help." Charles chuckled. The sarcasm stung a little. "Smart mouth," he muttered. "You lost too much food or read too many books?" "I lost my parents," she replied plainly, "but I didn't lose my brain." That hit him like a slap. He went quiet. The little girl stepped closer, peeking into the car bonnet. "You didn't close your battery cap properly," she pointed. Charles leaned over and looked. She was right. Then the little girl fixed it and also touched some things in the bonnet. She asked him to turn the key, and vroom! The car roared to life. The billionaire's eyes widened. What in the world? He jumped out of the car, mouth wide open like someone who just saw a ghost. "You did it! You actually did it!" He almost hugged her, but paused midway. She was just a child after all. Still, he couldn't hide his shock and joy. "You just helped me, young lady. For real." Amara gave a shy smile, dusting her tiny dress. It wasn't magic, sir. You just needed to close your battery cap properly. Charles stared at her like she was a walking miracle. But how on earth do you know this stuff? She shrugged like it was nothing. I sleep behind a mechanic's shop. I watch them fix cars when I can't sleep at night. Some of them even explain things to me, sometimes. Boom. That hit Charles right in the chest. This little girl, just 8 years old, homeless, hungry, and barefoot, had just fixed his multi-million-naira car. He felt his chest tighten. Guilt. Shock. Something he wasn't used to feeling. Without wasting time, he rushed to his car, opened the glove compartment, and pulled out a thick bundle of naira notes. Here, he said, stretching the money to her, take this for your kindness. At least get food, clothes, a warm place to sleep. But Amara stepped back and shook her head slowly. I can't take it, sir. Charles blinked. Wait, what? I just helped you, she said calmly. My kindness is not for sale. Goosebumps. Instant. Charles froze, completely stunned. This was new. This was different. Nobody had ever said that to him before. Not in business, not in life. People worshipped his money. But this little girl rejected it like it was nothing. He swallowed hard. Then, slowly, he put the money back in the car. Except for one small note. My name is Charles Coleman, he said, gently pulling out a card from his wallet. It had his name and company address on it. I'll be out of the country until next Thursday. But please, come to this office next week. Ask for me personally. Amara stared at the card. Then Charles reached out again and gave her 5,000 in crisp notes. Not as payment, just as transport. Please. She hesitated, but slowly took it. Thank you, sir, she whispered. No, Charles said softly. Thank you, Amara. You fixed more than just my car tonight. I think you just fixed something in me. Amara gave a little smile, tucked the card into her tiny bag, and walked off into the night. While Charles stood beside his now working car, staring at her with a strange feeling he hadn't felt in years. A few minutes later, Amara reached the back of the mechanic's shop where she usually slept, just beside a pile of old tires and scrap metals. The night was quiet. The air was cool. She looked at the 5,000 note again. Her eyes widened. Ha! This money is huge! She gasped and stared at it like it was gold. How could he offer me such amount just like that? Then she remembered the shiny card with Charles Coleman's name and company printed on it. She brought it out slowly like it was a treasure map. She sighed. No wahala. I will check on him on Thursday. Who knows, maybe he has other cars he wants me to fix. She smirked proudly, like a real mechanic. Now the problem was, where should she hide the money and the card? Her small bag already had a torn corner, and anything kept inside could easily fall out or get stolen. Then she smiled. She grabbed an empty plastic water bottle beside the tire pile. She unscrewed the cap, carefully rolled the money and the card together like a scroll, and slid them inside. Safe and dry, she whispered, screwing the cap back tightly. She dug a little hole under the scrap metal where no one would look and placed the bottle gently inside like a buried treasure. Then she lay down on a piece of old sack and covered herself with her thin sweater. Thursday. Come quickly, she whispered, eyes closing slowly. In seconds, Amara was fast asleep, smiling softly, dreaming of more cars to fix. Meanwhile, across the city, in a luxurious mansion with high ceilings and golden lights, Charles Coleman sat wide awake in his king-sized bed. He turned left. He turned right. No sleep. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. His heart was racing, not because of business deals or company stress, but because of one little girl. That girl, Amara, he muttered. How? How can a child be out there surviving like that? He stood up and walked to his balcony. The city lights blinked in the distance, but all he could see was her face, her strong, smart, kind face. No parents? No home? What about her relatives, her childhood? Yet she helps strangers like me for free? He shook his head and sighed deeply. Oh God, this is crazy, unbelievable. That kind of heart and that kind of life? He rubbed his face tiredly. I pray she comes around next Thursday. Please let her come. Then he looked up at the sky and said something he hadn't said in a very long time. Maybe, just maybe, I was meant to meet her tonight. A few days later, it was a Wednesday night. Amara couldn't sleep. She kept tossing and turning on the cold floor until she heard the first cock crow. She jumped up immediately from her corner, grabbed her ragged towel, and tiptoed behind the spoilt cars where she usually bathed before dawn. With water scooped from an old paint bucket, she quickly freshened up before the street got busy. Today, I'm fixing more cars, she whispered to herself with determination, tying her scarf firmly. She had already made inquiries about the address Charles Coleman gave her. It would take her about 5 hours to get there. So without wasting time, she packed her little nylon bag, wore her slippers, carefully placing Charles's business card and the $5,000 she received inside a slit she made under the sole of her slipper. That way, no one would ever guess she had money or anything important. She began her journey. First taxi, smooth. Second taxi, crowded, but she managed. The third taxi, that was the mistake. Amara didn't know it was going the wrong way. Exhausted from the long journey, she slowly dozed off on her seat, her tiny head resting against the dirty window of the bus. When she finally opened her eyes, it wasn't sunlight or city traffic that greeted her. It was darkness and silence. She was in a small, strange room. The walls were rough, the floor dusty, and the only furniture was a broken chair. A dim bulb flickered from above. Amara sat up, panicked, her heart racing. For a second, she couldn't remember how she got there. Then she heard voices. 2 men outside the room were talking. A small girl. She no go sabi anything, one of them said, laughing. The kind of money we go make from her en. The second one added, his voice dripping with evil. Amara froze. Her throat dried up instantly. Her eyes darted around the room as she clutched her slippers, making sure the money and card were still hidden. They were. Then she heard another voice. This time, a woman's. Muck unna no touch am. Just wait till night. We go settle everything then. That was when Amara understood. She was in the wrong place. Completely wrong. She wasn't on her way to see Mr. Charles. She had been abducted. Her body trembled as she crawled slowly to a corner. Oh God, she whispered, what have I entered? I just wanted to fix cars. I just wanted to see the man who believed in me. She wrapped her arms around her legs and buried her face, praying, whispering, hoping. Meanwhile, miles away, Charles Coleman was pacing in his room. He had waited for her all day in the office and had been staring at the clock all evening. I told her Thursday, he mumbled. Why hasn't she come? He had cleared his entire schedule, hoping to welcome her himself. His gut twisted with worry. That girl, the way she looked, so smart, so full of life. But there was sadness in her eyes, he said to himself. Where is she? What if something happened on her way? He picked up his phone, stared at it for a long while, then slammed it down in frustration. God, please, let her be safe. I pray she comes around. A moment later, Charles's phone sat on the glass table, vibrating. He had been pacing restlessly in his room, checking the door, the clock, then back to the business card in his hand. Suddenly, it rang again. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He stared at it for a moment, heart skipping. Could it be her? He slowly picked up the call and pressed it to his ear. Hello? A voice responded almost immediately, deep and slightly hoarse. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Henry, the mechanic who owns the space where Amara stays. Just wanted to know if she arrived safely. She left here very early this morning. Charles froze. His breath caught. He didn't say a word. His hand slowly fell to his side, phone still pressed against his ear. His heart pounded so loudly it echoed in his ears. She left? Early? But she never showed up. Hello? The man's voice came again, breaking the silence. Hello, are you still there? Charles blinked quickly, regaining his voice. Yes, I'm here. You mean Amara left this morning? Yes, sir. Around 4:30 a.m. She said she was going to meet someone important, someone who gave her a card. She seemed very excited. I just felt I should check in. Charles ran a hand over his head, his chest tightening with fear. She never came. I've been waiting all day. She didn't show up, and she hasn't called. There was a long pause. Oh my God, Henry said softly. That's not like her. She always returns by nightfall. You don't think? I don't know. Charles cut in, his voice now sharp with panic. I don't know, but something is wrong. I feel it. He walked over to the window, trying to stay calm. Can you send me the exact location she left from? Charles asked urgently. The mechanic shop. I'll be there first thing in the morning, and if anything else comes up, anything at all, you call me. Immediately. Okay, sir. I'll send it right away. The call ended. Charles dropped into a chair, his head in his hands. This wasn't just about a street girl anymore. Something was off. Deeply off. He looked up, his eyes filled with fear and determination. Wherever you are, Amara, just hold on. I'm coming for you. Very early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Amara was jolted awake by a rough hand shaking her shoulder. Stand up, a man barked. We're moving. Half asleep, Amara's eyes fluttered open, only to see a group of unfamiliar faces, all moving quickly, packing bags and whispering nervously. A woman yanked at her feet. Hurry! Police is raiding this area today. We need to change location. Within minutes, she was bundled into the back of a dusty bus, sandwiched between the woman and a bulky man who never stopped scanning the road. They drove for hours, bouncing along a rough, deserted path. Suddenly, the bus coughed twice and stalled. Crrrn! Crrrn! The driver turned the key again. Nothing. Two of the men in front jumped down immediately, lifting the bonnet and arguing. What's wrong with this useless thing? This is not the time for this rubbish. Police patrol pass this road every hour. I told you we should use the other van. They panicked, their voices rising. Amara sat quietly, glancing through the window, then at the bonnet. She could tell exactly what was wrong from the way the engine sounded. After a short silence, she turned to the woman beside her. I can help. The woman looked at her with raised brows. Help? How? I'm a mechanic. You? The woman sized her up. You mean you can fix it? Amara nodded. Yes, let me try. With uncertainty, the woman gestured for the others. Let her try. At this point, we don't have a choice. One of them brought out a small wooden stool from inside the bus so she could reach the bonnet properly. Amara climbed up, her hands fast and steady. She inspected the engine, tightened a bolt, adjusted a connection, and stepped back. Try it, she said calmly. The driver turned the key again. Vroom! The engine roared to life. They all shouted in joy, rushing toward her. But just before they got close, Amara quickly disconnected a wire. The bus rolled forward a little, and then went completely dead. Everyone froze. What happened again? The driver looked up, confused. The woman turned sharply. Small madam, she called softly now. Please help us. Check the bus again. Amara gave a small, knowing smile. She climbed back up, but this time she didn't fix it. She started loosening more things, removing a part here, twisting another there. She worked quickly, but silently prayed under her breath. God, if help is coming, let it be now. Please? Suddenly, a black and white police patrol van appeared in the distance. Amara didn't panic. She climbed down slowly, still holding a spanner, her hands greasy. One officer pointed at the odd scene. Is that a small girl fixing a bus? Their vehicle pulled over. But before the officers could get out, the men and woman took off, jumping into the nearby bush and disappearing between the trees. Amara watched them run, then turned to the officers as they approached. One of them stepped closer. What are you doing here, little girl? She wiped her hands, stepped forward, and said calmly, I was going to meet my father, Charles Coleman, yesterday, but I was kidnapped. The officers exchanged glances quickly. Charles Coleman? One repeated. The Charles Coleman? Amara nodded. Yes, he's my father. They looked at her in disbelief. And you dress like this? Amara gave a small smile, lowering her eyes. The officers scanned the bush with their torches, but the kidnappers were long gone. Then one of them turned to her again. "Do you think you can get this bus moving?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. If you want to tow it or drive it to the station, I can fix it." She climbed up once again, adjusted the disconnected wire, and fixed what she had tampered with earlier. The engine came back to life. The officers couldn't hide their surprise. They all got into the vehicle and made their way to the police station, with the bus following behind. Amara sat quietly, but inside, her heart was beating fast. She had escaped. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. At the police station, Amara sat quietly on a wooden bench in the corner, her dirty clothes clinging to her small frame, her greasy hands resting on her lap. The officers stood nearby, laughing and joking, casting suspicious glances in her direction. One of them sipped from a plastic cup and said, "She really said Charles Coleman is her father? Can you imagine?" Another chuckled. "Maybe she thinks we're fools. Just look at her. No shoes, tattered dress, and grease all over her face. She probably belongs to the kidnappers," another added. "That's their new trick. Send a small girl to act innocent." They all laughed. Amara's eyes welled with tears. "Please," she whispered, stepping forward. "Just call him. Please." He gave me his card. "I left it in a safe place, but I can tell you his name. Charles Coleman. Please." "Sit down," one of the officers barked. "We've heard enough." She sat back down, her heart breaking with each passing minute. Hours passed. Each time the door creaked open, Amara looked up in hope, only for it to be another officer or a civilian coming in for unrelated matters. She was beginning to lose strength, her eyes heavy with exhaustion and disappointment. Then, the door opened again, and in walked a tall, composed man in a crisp suit, his eyes scanning the room urgently. "Good afternoon," he said firmly. "I need to file a report." The officers stood straighter, recognizing Charles Coleman immediately. "I'm looking for a child, a girl, about 8 years old. Her name is Amara. I met her recently and she was supposed to come see me yesterday, but she never arrived." He pulled out a picture on his phone, showing it to the officers. The room went silent. The officer closest to Amara gasped, glancing at the little girl in the corner. "Wait, sir, did you say her name is Amara?" Charles nodded. One of them slowly turned around and pointed at the small girl sitting quietly, wiping her eyes. "That's her." Charles turned immediately, his eyes locked with hers. "Amara?" Amara stood up slowly, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "Sir, I tried to come, but they took me." Charles rushed to her, falling to his knees and pulling her into a hug. "My God, Amara." The officers watched, frozen in place. Reality hit them hard. This greasy, tattered girl was indeed Charles Coleman's daughter, or at least someone he deeply cared about. Charles turned sharply to the officers. "She's been here for hours. Why didn't anyone contact me?" One of them stammered. We thought she might be one of the kidnappers." Charles's eyes flared. "She's a child." He picked Amara up in his arms. "I'm taking her home, and I expect an apology. Every single one of you mocked a child instead of protecting her." The officers lowered their eyes, ashamed. Amara held on tightly to Charles as they walked out of the station. She had been humiliated, doubted, and laughed at. But now, in the arms of the man who believed in her, she finally felt safe. As Charles carried Amara out of the police station and gently placed her in the back seat of his car, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hello?" The voice on the other end answered quickly. "Henry," Charles said, his voice still filled with emotion. "I found her. Amara has been found." "Oh my God! Thank you, sir," Henry exclaimed with relief. "I've been worried all day." Charles smiled faintly. He glanced at Amara through the rearview mirror. She was curled up quietly, her eyes still red but calm now. "You did well, Henry. That picture you sent helped. The moment I showed it at the station, everything changed." "I'm so glad to hear that, sir. I just couldn't sleep thinking about her safety." Charles nodded, grateful. "Thank you again. I owe you." "No, sir, we owe her. That girl has a good heart, Henry replied. Charles ended the call and turned on the ignition. Without a second thought, he drove straight to one of the biggest boutiques in town. When they arrived, Amara hesitated at the entrance. The sparkling glass doors, shiny tiles, and racks filled with clothes were nothing like what she'd ever seen. She stepped back slightly. Charles noticed and gently touched her shoulder. "Come on, Amara, these are all for you." She looked up at him, unsure. "Me?" "Yes," he smiled. "You've been wearing oil-stained clothes and sleeping under spoilt cars for too long. Let's change that." With a soft nod, she followed him inside. Charles walked her through the boutique. Hand in hand, he picked out dresses, sneakers, jeans, and warm jackets. For every outfit, the attendant suggested, Charles turned to her and asked, "Do you like this?" And each time, Amara's eyes lit up a little more. They got a pair of white sneakers that made her smile shyly, a yellow sundress that brought out the brightness in her eyes. And when she saw a small pink wristwatch in a corner shelf, Charles noticed her pause and picked it up immediately. "We'll take this too," he told the cashier. By the time they were done, bags were loaded into the back of the car, and Amara sat in the front seat, clutching the small pink watch, her heart full. She had never been treated this way. And as the car drove off, a small voice in her head whispered, "Oh, from helping a stranger to sitting in an expensive car. Amara, you don't blow." A few hours later, Charles opened the door to his large mansion, gently guiding Amara inside. The tall ceilings, sparkling chandeliers, and well-polished floors left her speechless. "Welcome to your new home, Amara," he said with a soft smile. She turned slowly, looking around, her dusty feet hesitating to step further in. Immediately, Charles called out, "Lucy!" A tall, kind-faced woman in her early 40s walked briskly from the hallway. "Yes, sir," she responded with a respectful nod. "Please take Amara, bathe her, clean her up, and help her dress properly. She's our special guest." Lucy looked at Amara kindly. "Come with me, dear." Shyly, Amara followed her. Within minutes, Lucy had helped her soak in a warm bathtub, scrubbed off the layers of grease and dirt, and combed through her hair gently. She dressed her in one of the soft cotton dresses Charles had just bought for her. When Amara stepped out of the room and walked down the hallway, Charles looked up from his seat and was stunned. She looked like a little princess. "Wow," he muttered, unable to hide his surprise. "You look beautiful, Amara." A shy smile crept onto her face as she gently sat across from him. After breakfast, Charles led her into his study room. "I'll be in here working for a while," he said, sitting behind a large desk, flipping through a file. "You can stay with me." Amara looked around. Her eyes landed on a large brown photo album on the shelf. "Sir, can I go through your family photo album?" she asked, pointing at it. Charles glanced up and nodded. "Yes, you can. But I won't have time to explain the people in it right now. I'll do that later, okay? Just keep yourself busy." "Yes, sir." Amara nodded and carried him carefully to a chair. She began flipping through the pages, smiling at the baby pictures, the birthday parties, and the large family gatherings. The people looked so happy and rich. Some of the photos were old, slightly faded. But then her hand froze. Her eyes locked on one particular image. A woman in a maid's uniform, standing at the corner of a family picture, slightly behind everyone else. Her heart dropped. She leaned forward, squinting. It was her mother. "Sir?" Amara's voice trembled slightly. "Who is this woman?" Charles looked up from his file. Which one?" Amara pointed at the picture. "This one. The maid." Charles got up and walked over to see it. He stared at the photo for a moment, then said casually, "Oh, that's Anita. She used to work for my parents a long time ago." Amara's hands began to shake. "Do you know my mom?" Charles raised his brow. "Your mom? I think you told me she's late." "Yes," Amara replied, her voice breaking. "But this is my mom. Her name is Anita." Charles gasped. He took a step back, looking again at the photo. "Are you sure? That woman was just one of the maids my parents employed years ago. Quiet, hard-working Anita." "Yes," Amara said confidently. "That's my mother." Charles stared at her, confused, shocked, and speechless. A silence settled in the room, thick and heavy, as their eyes met. Charles turned to her, still staring at the photo, then at her face again. His throat was dry. "We need to go to the hospital right now," he said suddenly. Amara frowned, looking up at him with concern. "Is anyone sick?" Charles nodded slowly. "Yes, I am sick." Her expression changed immediately. She rushed to his side. "Oh no, you shouldn't have waited. Please let's go to the hospital now." Charles gave a weak smile, but inside he was burning with questions, fear, and a strange hope he hadn't felt in years. Later that day, at the hospital, they ran a DNA test immediately. The wait felt like forever. Amara sat quietly in the waiting room, her fingers crossed tightly, her eyes staring at the floor. Charles paced back and forth restlessly. Finally, the door opened and the doctor stepped out holding a file. "Mr. Charles Coleman?" Charles walked up quickly. "Yes, doctor?" The doctor looked from him to Amara, then back at Charles. He smiled. "She is your daughter." Silence. Charles blinked twice. "What?" The doctor nodded again, gently handing him the file. "The DNA test is a match. She's your biological daughter." Charles felt like the floor beneath him moved. He looked at Amara. She looked confused. "Sir, what did he say?" Charles bent down slowly to her level, tears already welling in his eyes. "He said, 'You're my daughter.'" Amara's mouth dropped open. "I'm your daughter?" Charles pulled her into a tight hug, holding her like he never wanted to let go. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I had no idea." Amara's eyes watered. "You're really my father?" "Yes, Amara, you're mine." And in that moment, the broken pieces of their lives began to fit into place, one truth at a time. Dead silence filled the house. The once lively atmosphere was now still. Charles and Amara sat on different couches, saying nothing to each other. The ticking wall clock became louder with each passing second. Amara stared blankly at her feet, while Charles occasionally glanced in her direction, but looked away just as quickly. The weight of the truth had landed heavily on both of them. Finally, Charles cleared his throat and broke the silence. "Do you have any relatives at all?" he asked gently. "Someone I can talk to." "You once told me you had a father." "I need to confirm some things, Amara." Amara slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. Tears welled up in them instantly. "Yes," she replied quietly. "My mom has an elder sister, but she hates me, and she hated my mom too." Charles leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "She didn't even come for my mom's burial, and when I had nowhere to go, when I was roaming the streets with no food or help, I went to her, but she chased me out like a plague. She said I was cursed like my mother." Charles's eyes darkened, his jaw clenched. "Why would she say that?" he asked, his voice tight. "Why did she hate you and your mom like that?" "I don't know," Amara whispered, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I have no idea. Mom never told me anything. She just cried a lot, mostly at night when she thought I was asleep." Charles leaned back slowly, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Something was wrong. Very wrong. There were pieces missing, too many of them, and he was determined to find every single one. "We're going to find out," Charles said calmly but firmly. "Everything. I promise you." Amara nodded slowly, hugging a throw pillow tightly to her chest. A week later, after a deep investigation into Anita's sister, Charles decided it was time to visit her personally. Together with Amara, they took the trip. As the sleek black car pulled into the compound, the sound alone drew the attention of almost everyone around. Curious neighbors peeked from their windows. Some came out and stood with arms folded, whispering amongst themselves. Madame Ella, Anita's elder sister, stepped out of her small bungalow and blinked repeatedly, unsure of what her eyes were seeing. She rubbed her eyes as if the image before her might disappear. "Amara, is that you?" she asked, her voice coated with surprise and disbelief. Amara gave a gentle nod and greeted her warmly. "Good afternoon, Ma." Without hesitation, she added, "This uncle is here to see you." Charles gave a polite nod. And soon they were all seated on the wooden bench just outside the house. The air was thick but calm. Charles cleared his throat and began, "Madam, thank you for receiving us. I'm here to ask a few things about Anita, your younger sister." Madame Ella adjusted her wrapper and nodded. "You are welcome. Go ahead." Charles went straight to the point. "Who impregnated Anita?" A small, almost shameful smile touched Ella's lips. "I don't know exactly who did," she began. But one day she came back from the city. She was about 5 or 6 weeks gone. She confided in me, told me she was pregnant, and that it was her boss's son that got her pregnant. He had already traveled back abroad before she realized it. Charles's eyes remained steady on her as she continued. I told her to forget about the man and marry someone else. There was this old man that had been disturbing me to marry Anita off to him. I saw it as a golden opportunity. He promised me anything I wanted, so I arranged everything. I forced Anita to marry him, collected money for the marriage, and even collected monthly salary for giving my sister to him. Charles clenched his jaw but didn't interrupt. Ella continued, her voice quieter now. That's why she stopped talking to me. She never forgave me. Maybe I didn't treat her well. Maybe I ruined her life. But, she paused, sighed deeply. That's the truth. Charles gave a small, appreciative nod. Thank you for telling the truth. Ella nodded slowly. At this point, I have no reason to lie anymore. But she turned to Amara, her voice unexpectedly cold. I never liked her. I don't even know why. I just didn't. Charles glanced at Amara, whose face remained calm, though her eyes told a different story. Then Charles looked back at Ella and said, Years ago, I returned home for a holiday. I was very sick. My parents weren't around. Anita was the one taking care of me. She was so quiet, so gentle. I don't know what came over me that day. I was weak, confused, and in that moment of weakness, I crossed the line. It happened only once. Just once. A week later, I went back to the States unaware she got pregnant. Madame Ella's eyes widened. So, you're the one? She gasped. You're her father? Charles looked at Amara. She gave a little nod and a faint smile. Yes, Charles said softly, I am. Tears streamed down Madame Ella's face. Not from joy, but a deep mixture of regret, shame, and confusion. I separated a child from her father, she whispered. I destroyed my own sister's life. Amara remained silent, only holding tightly to the hem of her dress. Charles stood up slowly. It's not too late to do right. You may not like Amara, but she's my blood. Without waiting for more, Charles gently helped Amara up. Let's go home. The neighbors still watched quietly as the car pulled out of the compound. But this time, the whispers were different. They weren't about the car. They were about the truth. Just after then, Amara's new life began like a dream as she finally settled in her father's house. She woke up on a soft bed, wrapped in clean bedsheets, sunlight kissing her cheeks through the curtain-lined windows. The gentle knock on her door in the morning always came from a maid who said, Good morning, Miss Amara. Sir Charles is waiting for you at the dining table. Miss Amara. It felt strange. It felt nice. A week after the trip, Charles introduced her to her new school, a prestigious, private school where the students wore clean uniforms and had confident smiles. She stood out, not because she looked out of place, but because there was something bold in her eyes, something only the streets could give. And when asked to introduce herself, she stood proudly and said, My name is Amara Coleman, and I want to be a mechanical engineer. The entire class blinked. Some giggled, others were curious. But one person who wasn't surprised at all was Charles. When she got home, he was already waiting by the poolside. He smiled. So, mechanical engineering? Amara nodded. I've always liked fixing things. Remember how I saved your car and how I planned my escape from the kidnappers by fixing their bus? He laughed, deep and full. How could I forget? From that day on, their bond grew. Charles spent his free time learning everything about her favorite things. They played board games together. He watched her sketch machines on the dining table, even joined her in the garage one Saturday as she attempted to dismantle an old engine just to study it. His hands got greasy. He didn't care. For Charles, this was healing. Making up for the past. One afternoon, he handed her a key. This is your personal driver, Mr. Tunde. He'll take you to school and anywhere else you want to go. You're no longer alone, Amara. Amara blinked. I don't deserve all this. He held her hands and said, You deserve even more, my daughter. Years later, time moved like a river, fast, steady, unstoppable. Amara stood tall on the stage of the university auditorium, dressed in her graduation gown. Her name had just been called Best Graduating Student, Faculty of Engineering, Amara Coleman. The hall erupted in applause. Charles rose to his feet, clapping proudly, his eyes misty. His daughter, the one he never knew existed, had become the woman who reconnected him to a past he almost lost forever. After the ceremony, reporters rushed toward Amara. "Young lady, you've made history. What inspired you to study mechanical engineering?" Amara smiled, holding her award tight. "Well, years ago, a stranger's car broke down on a lonely road. I fixed it, and that moment became the turning point of my life. That kindness led me to my father, and that moment led me here." A hush fell among the reporters before one shouted, "Incredible!" Charles stepped beside her, placed a proud hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "You didn't just find your father, Amara, you found your destiny." And indeed, she had. She was no longer the girl they ignored, or the child they mocked, or the orphan they chased away. She was Amara Coleman, daughter of a billionaire, mechanical engineer, and a living proof that no matter how rough the journey starts, destiny always finds its way home. Months later, Amara had traveled far and wide. She had stood before world leaders, attended global engineering conferences, and signed contracts with multinational automobile firms. But despite the cameras, flashing lights, and her new last name, she never forgot where it all began. A dusty mechanic workshop, a torn mattress by the oil-stained wall, a man named Uncle Henry. And so, one sunny Saturday afternoon, Amara returned, not just as a guest, but as a daughter coming home to honor the man who first believed in her. The once scattered, rust-covered workshop had been transformed. A sparkling new sign read, "Henry's Auto Diagnostics, powered by Amara Coleman Engineering." There was music in the air, decorated chairs under canopies. Local press and curious neighbors gathered. And right in front, an emotional Henry stood in a crisp new suit, trying hard not to cry. Amara took the stage. With tears brimming in her eyes, she raised the microphone. "Before I became a Coleman, before I ever touched a university door, before anyone called me brilliant, one man opened his heart to me when I had nothing but a torn bag and a broken dream." She turned and gestured to him. "Mr. Henry is the only family I had until I met my father. He allowed me to sleep in his workshop. He never took advantage of me. He gave me small care within his little means, but most importantly, he gave me the passion that led me to my destiny. He taught me how to fix cars. He taught me how to dream. He showed me what it means to love someone without asking for anything in return." The crowd clapped thunderously as Amara stepped down and hugged Henry tightly. And then, out of the crowd, Madame Ella emerged. She waited until Amara was done receiving guests, then approached quietly. Without shame, she dropped to her knees. Her voice trembled. "Please, Amara, forgive me. I was wrong. Let me be the mother you've lost. I know I failed. I know I hurt you and your mom. But I am begging for another chance. Please." Amara turned slowly. Silence fell. She looked into Madame Ella's eyes, not with hatred, but with a quiet strength that only comes from surviving betrayal. "Sister Anita," Amara said softly. The name stung like a slap. "I disconnected fully from you the day you confessed how you traded my mother for money. You didn't just chase her away. You sold her. If you hadn't, maybe, just maybe, she would still be alive today." Madame Ella began to sob. Amara gave a small, sad smile. "You're not my enemy, but you can never be my mother." And with that, she walked away, gracefully, powerfully, leaving Ella on her knees, surrounded by the truth she could no longer hide from. Years later, a large glass building gleamed under the morning sun, surrounded by a fleet of cars designed and engineered in Africa by a woman. Inside, young girls in navy blue coveralls sat behind tool benches, learning how to dismantle and rebuild engines with confidence. On the wall above them was a powerful quote in bold letters. You're never too small to fix something, even your own life. Amara Coleman. In a grand office upstairs, Amara sat at her mahogany desk overlooking the campus. She was now a renowned mechanical engineer, CEO of Amara Autotech, and founder of the largest automotive training institute for girls across Africa. Amara Autotech Academy for Girls, Lagos, Nigeria. Her mission is to give the same opportunity Uncle Henry gave her to every forgotten girl with oil-stained fingers and a stubborn dream. Charles Coleman walked in, a bit grayer, but proud. He dropped a folder on her desk. Uninvited you to speak next month. You're officially one of their global role models for innovation in engineering and youth empowerment. Amara smiled. Tell them I'll come, but only if I can wear my jumpsuit. They both laughed. A moment later, she walked into the workshop, surrounded by teenage girls who paused what they were doing and clapped when they saw her. Auntie Amara. Ma'am, come see what I built. Can you sign my toolbox? She sat with them, greasy and glowing. She wasn't just teaching engineering. She was giving lost daughters a reason to believe again. And in the courtyard outside, a bronze statue of Uncle Henry stood proudly, holding a spanner and smiling. In memory of the man who never gave up on me, even when I had nothing. Hello, besties. Wow, what a journey Amara went through, from pain to purpose, rejection to recognition. Her story reminds us that where you start doesn't determine where you'll end up. Moral lessons. 1. Never look down on anyone. You don't know who they'll become. 2. A little kindness can change someone's entire life. 3. Your talent, no matter how small, can connect you to your destiny. Even in brokenness, God can rebuild your story beautifully. To all the Mr. Henrys in the world, thank you. To every Amara out there, keep going. Your light is coming. Please, besties, don't forget to leave a comment in your language and tell me what touched you the most in Amara's story. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs a little hope today. I love you all so much, and as always, God bless you.